This isn't the first time we're hearing of unfair treatment of players in tennis, and you can bet it won't be the last time either. Wondering what happened this time? The Wimbledon champion, Elena Rybakina, was offered to begin her campaign on an outdoor court, for which the Australian Open has been accused of treating her with disrespect and snubbing her. Join us as we bring you more on this, along with other Australian Open drama. First up, why is a Wimbledon champion being snubbed? Put some respect on that name. Since winning Wimbledon, Elena Rybakina hasn't received much respect or attention. Now she's set to begin her Australian Open campaign on one of the outside courts. It's hard to understand why her treatment hasn't changed in the 6 months after she won the world's most prestigious tennis championship at the All England Club. Rybakina was slated to play her US Open first-round match on court 12 in her first Grand Slam competition following winning Wimbledon. Many were shocked by the US Open scheduling since Rybakina ultimately lost shockingly to Clara Burel. She will now face Elisabetta Cocciaretto on court 13 in the Australian Open's first round. One of the most well-known tennis journalists, Ben Rothenberg, is among many who are utterly shocked by the lack of respect and appreciation Rybakina has been receiving. Just imagine, Elena Rybakina, the defending Wimbledon champion, is being forced to play her opening Australian Open match on court 13, way out in the distance. We know that there's a saturation in women's slam champions, but has a Wimbledon champion ever been so quickly dismissed? When her run at Wimbledon began, she was just outside the top 20, but because Wimbledon was stripped of ranking points by the WTA, Rybakina didn't get a significant rise in ranking after winning. In fact, she would have reached a career-high ranking of number 6 and would likely be currently placed among the top 10 if she had received her 2,000 ranking points for Wimbledon. Now, what's the reason for this disparity then? The girl is currently ranked number 23 and isn't exactly being treated like a superstar on the biggest platform. Wimbledon has consistently been recognized as the biggest and most prestigious tennis tournament in tennis history, so winning it must amount to some clout, right? And get this, she'd just turned 23 before Wimbledon, achieved her ambition of winning it, and yet her perception and treatment haven't altered one bit. Sure, Rybakina is fairly low-key and unaffected by drama or controversy both on and off the court, but for her fans, and for anyone who's unbiased in following the game, it's disappointing to see a Grand Slam champion and obviously excellent role model for children not receiving the respect and appreciation she deserves. Looks like the Kazakhstani player failed to move up the rankings as a result of Wimbledon's prohibition on Russian competitors, which prevented it from awarding ranking points. Rybakina, who is currently ranked number 25 in the world, will play Italian Elisabetta Cocciaretto in the opening round. There have been a lot of comments, many of which criticize Australian Open officials for the scheduling issue. The Wimbledon rankings ban, according to tennis commentator Jose Morgado, is still having an effect on her chances of winning Grand Slams. The Wimbledon champion, being given an outdoor court to compete at the Australian Open, has drawn heavy criticism, with some fans alleging that she's being treated unfairly due to her appearance and lack of marketability. What do you reckon? Next up, eyebrows are being raised at the Open's scheduling. She isn't at all well known compared to players who are more intriguing, captivating, and marketable, which is detrimental. Would a packed stadium shell out cash to watch her play against a lesser-known player? It stinks because you need to be well-known if you win a slam. Emma will compete during prime time on a significant court. Not just one match caused some to wonder. Dominic Thiem, a multiple Grand Slam champion, is returning to the Australian Open. In John Cain Arena, the well-liked Austrian will compete against Andrei Rublev in the opening round at 11 a.m. The Australian Open authorities were once again criticized over the scheduling of the intriguing first-round match. For two of the most famous players on the men's circuit, many believe that this is a strange time. Coming up, what does Elena think of all this? Wimbledon's organizers opted to exclude Russian and Belarusian players in the wake of the invasion of Ukraine, which Moscow refers to as a special military operation, and the sports governing organizations, the ATP and WTA, deprived those players of their ranking points as a result. This led to Rybakina missing out on 2,000 ranking points after winning the Wimbledon final against Ons Jabeur and the opportunity to move up from 25 to the top 10, where she might have started her Melbourne campaign on a show court. But guess what? Rybakina said she didn't care where she competed as long as she could finish it off with victories that'd build her confidence. Way to go, champ. She said this when asked about having to play her Australian Open first-round match on an outside court at Melbourne Park, and went on to show us all how it's done. On court 13, the 23-year-old silenced all critics by winning 7-5, 6-3 against Cocciaretto, who finished second at the Hobart International last week. So yes, she she's made it clear that she doesn't mind not being in the spotlight and is here to win. After advancing to the next stage, she's set to take on Kaja Juvan of Slovenia. Moving on, the Australian Open is struggling with withdrawals too. The Grand Slam withdrawal of Australian Ajla Tomljanovic added to the drama of the Australian Open. After failing to recover from an injury, the highest-ranked Australian announced that she wouldn't compete in the Australian Open. With her withdrawal, the women's draw for the Melbourne tournament will feature no Australians other than wildcards for the first time ever. Paula Badosa, the world's number 16 tennis player, was also forced to leave due to injury just hours after Tomljanovic announced her withdrawal. Then, following the announcement that she was expecting her first child, Naomi Osaka withdrew from the competition. World number 1 Carlos Alcaraz withdrew from the men's competition because of an injury. Some good news is that after suffering an injury in the warm-up competition, British sensation Emma Raducanu was in a race against time to recover, which she has. The rising talent has now recovered and will play in the opening round. Now, Serena Williams is currently recovering from a hamstring injury, and Venus Williams decided to sit out this season rather than compete after having a dismal 2021 season that left her needing a wildcard entry. As a result, this year marks the first Australian Open without a Williams sister since 1997. So many no-shows. Anyway, we know how the Australian Open has been known for a lot of drama, especially with a certain player and vaccines lately. Stick around, we've got more for you ahead. Coming up, all the drama that surrounded Australian Open. What's with these famous players not wanting to get COVID jabs? Camilla Giorgi, a famous tennis player from Italy, is being investigated amid claims that she traveled the world in 2022 playing tennis, including in the Australian Open the previous year, with a fake COVID vaccination certificate. Giorgi allegedly did this to enter the country in 2022 so that she could compete in the Australian Open. Now, in a shocking turn of events, Giorgi's personal doctor, Daniela Grillon, has claimed that the world number 66 was never immunized and requested a fake certificate from her. Grillon was arrested by Italian authorities for immunizing hundreds of people with fake serums, and Giorgi was under investigation by the Italian police for using a fake certificate. As word of the scheme grew, Dr. Grillon's office occasionally had lines of people waiting for phony COVID jabs. Hundreds of medical professionals, including singer Madame, police officers, business owners, and nurses, have been implicated in the scandal too. The Italian is currently in Adelaide, where she lost her Adelaide International qualifying match. She's set to compete in the Australian Open, which began on January 16th in Melbourne. If you remember, last year Novak Djokovic received a notorious deportation from Australia for failing to obtain the necessary vaccinations or a legitimate exemption before entering the country. Even though COVID immunization is no longer required to enter Australia as of November, the Department of Home Affairs states that if fake documentation is proven, a person's visa application may be rejected or revoked. Now, let's talk more about that Djokovic drama. The Australian Open wouldn't be the same without some drama involving former world number 1 Novak Djokovic. And once more, the Serb didn't disappoint. Was he planning to withdraw after twice postponing practice, a la Nick Kyrgios? Djokovic eventually made an appearance and spoke to fans as he left the court, letting them know all was okay. The drama was by no means comparable to that of last year, when the Serb was refused entrance to Australia over not getting COVID jabs and ultimately deported back to Serbia after being made to remain in a detention hotel while he awaited the outcome of his appeal. There are times when it appears like Djokovic lives on drama, whether it be on or off the court. No? Finally, here are some of the old controversies we can't not talk about. Starting with a tone-deaf ad campaign in 2020, they claimed Nike's women's tennis apparel would help players combat fiery conditions on the court. Nike received harsh criticism on social media because the timing of the campaign was horrible. Australia was experiencing one of its worst wildfire seasons ever. Oh, and remember in 2016 when Maria Sharapova, a 5-time Grand Slam champion, revealed that she'd tested positive for drugs after losing to Serena Williams in the quarterfinals? The World Anti-Doping Agency added meldonium to its list of prohibited substances, which the Russian athlete admitted to using. She received a 2-year suspension that was ultimately reduced to 15 months on appeal. She also lost $375,000 she'd won from making it to the quarterfinals. Finally, the biggest drama was when the renowned John McEnroe, dubbed Super Brat for his frequent disagreements and derogatory remarks about referees and linesmen, was disqualified from a 1990 match against Sweden's Mikael Pernfors due to misbehavior. The American made history for becoming the first guy to be disqualified from the Grand Slam for misconduct. Now, that's a record to keep. And that's all for now. Don't you think Elena deserves more respect at the Australian Open? open, let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.